Welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast, presented by Renergize Professional Coaching. Thank you for tuning in to this episode to be motivated and inspired by the leadership journey of others. This show is dedicated to helping you take intentional steps in your leadership to maximize your impact. Leadership is all about people. You will meet people on this podcast just like you. People looking to make a difference in the lives of others intentionally. It is time to become an intentional leader. Now, to our host, Shawn Olson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of the Intentional Leader Podcast. This is the podcast where you hear the real stories of normal people just like you who become extraordinary leaders. You'll learn some valuable lessons from their lives, lessons you can apply to become the best leader you were created to be. When you become an intentional leader, lives are changed. I'm your host, Shawn Olson. I'm an executive coach, business owner, author, and speaker. Thank you for joining us today. I am proud to have with us today Marcus Van Alphen. Marcus is not from the United States. You might hear a slight accent with him today. He lives in Amsterdam, but he also spends a lot of time in Spain. And actually, he's in the midst of a workcation in Spain today. Marcus is a leadership psychologist and author, and I know you're in for a treat today, listeners. Marcus, it's great to have you on the Intentional Leader Podcast. How are you today?
Thank you, Shawn. Lovely to be your guest here today.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. So we came into contact through a common friend, a previous podcast guest, Becky Robinson, and you as an author have done some work with her company, and so that's how we came to know one another, and we've chatted a little bit. Every episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast, we just have our guests kind of walk through their story a little bit, how their professional career started and the steps they've taken and the leadership lessons they've learned. You're a little bit different as a leadership psychologist and how that all plays out, but just kind of tell us a little bit about you and your journey through your professional career in leadership.
Well, it's a long story, so I'm not going to give you all the nitty-gritty because that would take far too long. But I started my career as an electrical engineer, and I was pretty good at that, pretty successful in that. And so I found myself at age 28 as one of three directors of a firm of consulting engineers. We had personnel, I think 30, 40 people in our employ. And I had done a little bit of a part of a business degree in the meantime, just because we also had a business to run. And at a given moment of time, I was sitting there and thinking, okay, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's quite a confrontational thing.
Yeah.
So somewhere I realized I'm not doing what's really giving me energy at all. So even though I'm good at this, this is not what I'm here for.
Wow.
And it took me the better part of probably 12 years, maybe even longer, before I found, okay, telling electrons which way to go, that's one thing, but really it's not that interesting. So went back to university, studied psychology. I'm giving you the short version. There's a lot of stuff in between there. And for some reason, I got very interested by a certain professor, and his theme really was communication. And this whole thing of communication somehow triggered with me. So there was something in communication. Why is it that some people they manage so simply to communicate with one another, and with other people it goes so difficult? It's just, I just don't understand. So this made this whole subject so interesting for me. And I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'm saying I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And part of my work eventually was to be just a psychologist, and a psychologist in the sense of the counseling practice, where clients come to me and I help them with all kinds of issues. And in the past approximately 3 to 5 years, maybe a bit longer, most of my clients are sent to me by organizations.
Okay.
And a lot of it's got to do with burnout, but a lot of it's also got to do, a lot of companies also realize that the mental health of their employees is important. And not only in terms of that, what happens at work, but also what happens in private. So yes, a lot of my clients do have burnout problems, do have issues with stress that are stress related and things like that, but also all kinds of mental health issues.
Mm.
But what really became very interesting for me was, okay, if we look at why people get burnout, and there's one factor in there that is so incredibly interesting, and that's leadership.
Mm.
And especially when we talk on the negative side, toxic leadership, wow, the effects it has on people is devastating, really devastating.
Wow. So on that issue, really quick, with the toxic leadership, as you're working with these individuals, were you finding any common trends of what toxicity was?
Well, toxicity comes in all. I mean, it's not you have either a toxic leader or not. So that any degree between slightly to extreme. If we talk about the really extreme ones, we're talking about what we call narcissistic leaders. We're talking about arrogancy, which is somewhere a little bit less than the narcissistic leader. So these are people who are leading for, as far as I'm concerned, for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
They're leading for themselves. They're not leading for the people they support or they're supposed to support.
Wow. I love that. And where did that take you then, hearing the mental health issues and the burnout from toxic leadership?
Well, really, as I say again, my interest, my speciality was always communication and what makes communication work. A part of my task as well was training therapists in their communication skills. And so the skills that I discovered there, or at least one of the things I discovered there, I thought, what if we bring this into leadership? What if this is that little missing link that could make the difference between a good leader and an excellent leader?
Mm.
And that was really my trigger. I've dubbed it observational listening. And the story behind it is actually quite simple. I was training people, and I was questioning myself, why is it that some people, they just sit down and they do it, and the conversation just goes, and without any effort, they reach the correct level of profundity in the conversation. And other people battle. Other people, you're sitting watching them, and your toes are sort of curling up under the desk. You're thinking, "Ooh, how do you do that? I mean, why?"
Yeah.
And this puzzle, actually, this was for me the interesting thing. What is the core difference between these two cases? And my hypothesis, and I've done a lot of work to actually discover that I think it's pretty damn true, is that the people who can do it well are the people who are observing, and not just observing in general, but they're observing very specifically the emotions that are going on in their conversational partner at this very moment. So it's not about emotions in the past or emotions in the future. It's the current emotions. They're watching, they're observing, they're feeling what that other person is going through. Empathy is key here. And they are actually reacting on that emotion. And by doing that, the other one, the person who's talking, is actually feeling heard. They're actually feeling this person understands me. They understand what I'm going through, and they're with me.
Yeah.
And that's what I gave the name observational listening to, people who observe whilst listening.
Yeah. We're going to take a deeper dive in that in just a little bit. I know because of the work that you've done and the lessons you have learned, you have been very good at writing, and that you have 3 books. Your third one's getting ready to come out here shortly.
Yeah.
Tell us about the first 2, because I know they kind of build up to this third one. What were the first 2 books?
Well, I had a book. It was one book with everything in it, and the problem with that is it's just far too much. It's just far too much. I'm trying to I'm trying to be too complete, and this was again one of my lessons, and perhaps this is also a leadership lesson. Is it's actually an old primary school joke. I don't know if you remember it. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. Exactly that. So, and this was my lesson again here. I was trying to put out too much and I was trying to be too complete, everything in one book, and that wasn't working. So I chopped it up into bites, and I found 3 bites that I thought were interesting. And the one is sort of really the basics. What is, and then I start with what everybody actually should know, which is active listening, as we call that. And then I put that layer of observational listening on top of that. So it's really the basics that I think that even a beginner or a beginning leader or somebody who's not even in an official leadership position could use to be more leading in what they do.
Great. So that first book is called what? What's the title of that one?
The Excellent Leader.
The Excellent Leader. And then you followed it up with number 2, which is called
The More Excellent Leader.
The More Excellent Leader. I love that. And book 3 that's coming out.
The Most Excellent Leader. So, I mean, use language. I mean, language is important.
It's building up. So for our listeners out there, do the 3 books really build on one another in the sense that it'd be good to start at number 1?
Definitely. I'm not saying that that a lot of people, especially who have been leaders for some time, probably already have a lot of the active learning skills in place. At least that's what I hope.
Right.
So the first book, I wouldn't say it's superfluous. No, on the contrary, because I don't only handle the active listening skills, I add that part of observational listening to it, thereby also making the active listening skills more powerful. So I believe that first book is really the place to start.
Good. Lays the foundation for it, and then you get more of the intricacies as it goes. Fantastic. Well, we're going to take a deeper dive into observational listening in just a moment, but we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
The Intentional Leader Podcast is presented by Reenergize Professional Coaching. Are you looking for that next promotion? Are you ready to accelerate your growth and become the leader you were meant to be? Then now is the time to contact Reenergize Professional Coaching. Reach out to them for your free consultation. www.reenergize.com. That's RENOGIZE.com. Now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody. Once again, today we are with Marcus Van Alphen. He is a leadership psychologist and author, and we've just heard about his 3 books, but really this concept from his psychology around the idea of observational listening. You've kind of dabbled around the edge of this a little bit with us so far, Marcus, but let's just take a deep dive for the next 8 or 10 minutes on observational listening, how it's different from active listening, or kind of like that next generation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through that, and we'll kind of just go back and forth here to understand it.
Well, I mean, perhaps it's easiest if I use a simple example.
Sure.
If we're looking at active listening, what we often do is when we're listening to somebody, we repeat a word or 2 or 3 words that somebody has just said. In technical terms, we call that a literal reflection. So that's already part of active listening. Observational listening says, yes, of course you must do this because the other person feels heard because you're repeating some of the words they used. Yet you can choose which words you reflect. And this is where observational listening just says, well, choose those words where you notice that they are loaded with some other emotion. It doesn't matter which emotion it is, but those words that you feel, here is some emotion attached to that. It means that those words are important to the other person. And by just dropping only those words, you're actually opening or you're creating a space a safe space in which the other person feels more free to open up and tell more.
I love that. But let me ask you a question on that.
Sure.
Conversations, obviously, face to face would be the easiest realm of understanding or seeing some emotion.
Sure.
Virtual, like Zoom, is a little bit more difficult. Phone would be even more difficult. How would you help somebody to begin to identify in the person they're listening to that those emotions exist?
Well, I disagree with you that Zoom is difficult because some of my research shows you can have just as a valuable conversation via something like Zoom, via video call, than face to face. And when it comes to emotion, that's pretty understandable because if you just think about it, where do you pick up the most emotional cues from your conversational partner? I don't know. I'll bounce the question back to you. What do you think?
Typically, I think it's going to be in the physical expressions. Sometimes they sit differently. Sometimes they're peeking up. Sometimes they may be withdrawing if it's a difficult piece.
Sure. And that you can all see in a video call.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those what I'm saying is a lot of the emotional cues are just as visible on a video call as they are face to face. And my experience is that the most of the information you can get on somebody else's emotion, yes, their facial expressions, and especially, I don't know how to put it, but the way they look through their eyes, the way they look at you. So just focusing on people's facial expressions, the way they look at you, also the way they use their voice. The premise behind conversational listening, of observational listening, is that you use all your senses to get the best approximation you can of which emotions the other is experiencing in the here and now. And all your senses as much as that is possible. So obviously eyesight is the most important. Hearing is also very important. You hear people's voice, the way they use their voice. I mean, if I start talking faster and I start talking in a higher range of my voice, there's something that's, to give you an example.
Yeah.
And when I can slow down and I can go into the lower range of my voice, and that gives a completely different emotional landscape. So with all your senses.
I like that. What I like about that, especially it fits with this podcast, is you have to be intentional with it. When I hear you talk about listening with all of your senses, the thought that comes to my mind is I have to be fully present. And that's part of the problem with communication today.
Yes.
Is people are not fully present.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is the whole thing about multitasking. There is a ton of research. It just shows humans cannot multitask.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can do it, but the point is that our performance on any two tasks we do simultaneously diminishes on both tasks. So to me, it's impossible. It's simply a weird idea that if you want to listen to another person, that you're busy doing something else at the same time. To me, that's mind-blowing that people even think that that's an option.
Yeah. So I'm having a conversation with someone. I'm observing them. I noted some positive energy, maybe some negative energy. So those are the words that I want to pull out. When I respond to them, do I acknowledge that I'm seeing emotion? How do I continue the conversation and go deeper?
Well, you have several options, and some of them again are the standard active listening things. You can reflect somebody's emotion by all means if you feel it's appropriate. I mean, it's not always appropriate to do that, but sometimes even that simple little trick of choosing what you respond on, just choosing that one word that somebody says something, for example, and then I was really angry at them, and you just pop back that word, angry, because that's the word where the emotion was most evident. And it's not even that that other person needs to respond to it. So I'm not asking a question. I'm not saying angry with my voice going up at the end. No, I'm just saying angry. So I'm just reflecting that word back to them. It could be that that just is enough for that person to feel so heard that they're willing to dive a level deeper. And it's almost effortlessness. And this is what I like about it, just being completely present, which is exactly what you're saying. And that's the key factor.
I like that. I know for a lot of leaders, they struggle in listening and communication because they are fixers. They want to fix things. With what you're describing about setting the stage for the speaker to go deeper into what's taking place, we're not fixing anything, are we?
No. This is the same discussion on motivation. Am I as a leader there to motivate people? If that's true, well, good luck. Really, people are always motivated. They're coming to work. Why are they coming to work? Well, there's something in the reason why they're coming to work that shows they're motivated. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not so much motivating others as an active action. It's more discovering what somebody is motivated to. And again, this is also where that whole thing on emotion, people aren't motivated to do anything unless it's important for them. And something is only important when it's loaded with some form of emotion. So this is why I find this whole idea of empathy, emotional intelligence, I believe that should be trained as any other hard skill any leader should have in their arsenal of capabilities.
I agree. And I love that you just said hard skill. I think too often emotions and communication and tapping into people is viewed as the soft skills.
Sure.
There's nothing soft about it. It is hard to pick up.
Nothing soft. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. There's nothing soft about them.
Yeah. So the idea that in leadership, EQ actually is more important than IQ. You believe that, don't you?
I do. No, I mean, this is the same story as you hear a lot of leaders old style saying, well, emotions have no place in the workplace. Emotions are for at home and all those kind of things. Here at the workplace, we're completely rational. No, I'm sorry, but I only have one word for that, and it's a rude word, so I won't mention it in your podcast. But I think you can imagine some words.
Yes, it's out of place. I understand that. I love that. So I know in addition to being an author that you have your own company. Talk about your company for a few minutes and what all you're doing.
Well, my own company does several things at once, and this is mainly because, how shall I put this? I discovered that my mind is all over the place. So I don't get happy by doing one thing every day, the same thing every day. So rather than see that as a negative thing, I've embraced that. So what I do is I write books, and the idea, funnily enough, is not so much to sell books. I'm far more interested in getting people to practice those skills. So part of the largest portion of my company is actually training. And that's training. I'd give trainings, especially in the Netherlands, communication trainings, all kinds of different trainings, leadership trainings, time management, all kinds of skills. I have an complete online training course where people can follow trainings at their own rate, at their own tempo, what suits them. Yeah, and I have my own practice. This is just to help people who are having issues, and a lot of them that I'm helping have to do with stress-related and burnout issues.
Yeah. Our listeners are familiar with coaching because I'm an
Mhm.
executive coach, have an executive coaching firm. And so in a lot of our work in coaching, we're helping them tap into leadership skills, building out their toolkit, being a sounding board. How is your work one-on-one a little bit different than that?
You mean my work one-on-one with clients or
Correct.
with
Correct. With
uh,
clients.
uh, with clients who are dealing with mental issues?
Hmm.
Well, the difference there is really I'm not so much a sounding board. Well, I am too. But really, what I'm helping them discover is what is it that's making them um, burn out. In this case, often my roots on this is usually emotion. So I start with emotion, and yes, we often have very strange convictions. But changing someone's conviction isn't as easy as what people think. I mean, I can't just tell you, "Hey, you've had a lousy day. Just step over it, or just think differently." Um, it's easy to say that, but it's very difficult to put that in practice.
Yeah. It doesn't set a
So
stage for them to change.
no, and so a lot of my work really has got to do with accepting the emotions that you experience, accepting that they're there for a reason. You don't even have to know what the reason is that they're there.
Mm.
Funnily enough, I think it's far more important trying to discover what they're motivating you towards. You know, there is some sort of push behind each emotion saying, hey, you need something. And trying to find out what that need is, if you can do that, then it doesn't really matter what the cause was, because it helps you discover where you need to go to.
Yep. I like that. So that's that whole realm of we cannot control what happens to us,
No,
but we can control how we respond.
sure, sure.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that. I love the impact you're having on people in that way. Well, Marcus, it's been good to have you today. We finish every episode with the same question. So I want to ask you that question. This is the Intentional Leader podcast.
Mm.
And so we always ask, what is something our listeners can do intentionally today
Mhm.
to lead more effectively?
Well, I think what's most important really is the question, am I listening? And I think the most valuable clue is to ask yourself who's doing the most talking. So if this is the other person who's doing the talking and you're actually asking relevant questions, this is a simple signal that you're listening. So that would be my tip is start noticing, can I be quiet? Can I pose a question? Can I keep my mouth shut? And can I listen to this other person and ask a follow-through question again on something which is loaded with emotion? And that to me, I think is probably the easiest tip somebody can start practicing straight away.
Easy, but incredibly powerful. I like that.
I hope.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Well, it's great to have you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Spain right now. If our people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I think the easiest way is to reach me via either my website. I have a website, excellentleader.com, or via my LinkedIn profile. Those are the two easiest ways to find me.
Fantastic. And listeners will have some of those links in our show notes down below. Marcus, it's been great to have you. Thank you for spending time with us, and thank you for your work and impacting leadership around the world.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can be alerted with every new episode. The Intentional Leader Podcast is presented by Renogize Professional Coaching. Renogize is impacting thousands of leaders through executive coaching and leadership development. For more information about today's episode, please see the show notes below.